Gentlemen and ladies, nothing pierces the soul more deeply than being rejected by your own child in the later years of life. It's not just heartbreak, it's a quiet devastation that strikes at the very foundation of your identity. After years, decades, of sacrifice, sleepless nights, unconditional love, and unwavering support, to be cast aside, ignored, or forgotten by the one you nurtured feels like a betrayal so profound, words fall short. You relive the memories, the first steps, the laughter, the late-night fevers, the endless encouragement, and then, silence. No phone calls. No messages. No trace of the bond you poured your life into. The pain is not just emotional, it is existential. It leaves you questioning everything. What went wrong? Was I not enough? Could I have done something differently? But what if I told you that this very pain, this gut-wrenching rejection, is not the end of your story? What if buried deep within this loss is a blessing in disguise? A turning point? A profound invitation not to crumble, but to rise. To rediscover the version of yourself that existed long before your role as a parent, and to unearth a strength that not even the child who walked away can take from you. Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear might not only soothe your wounded heart, but transform the way you see rejection itself. There comes a moment in life when everything you believed about love, loyalty, and permanence is turned upside down. And for many, that moment arrives when the very child you raised, protected, and gave your soul to, turns away. The silence they leave behind echoes louder than any words. It haunts you. And yet, in that silence lies an invitation, to look inward. This is the truth many are too afraid to speak: rejection from your own child is one of life's cruelest blows. But it is also one of life's most powerful awakenings. You see, rejection is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It strips away illusions, chisels at the ego, and demands you go deeper. It forces you to stop placing your self-worth in the hands of others, even those you love most. It reveals what's real and what was only ever conditional. And here's what's hardest of all to accept: sometimes, the people we gave everything to still walk away. Not because we failed, but because their journey took a different turn. And that has nothing to do with our value. Reality, my friends, was never promised to be fair. If you're waiting for a world where love is always reciprocated, where bonds never break, where gratitude is guaranteed, you'll live in constant heartache. Life doesn't operate on emotional contracts. It tests us. It refines us. And it often does so through pain. But hear me clearly, your value is not defined by who stays or who leaves. Your essence is untouched by their absence. The pain of rejection is real. It feels like a wound that will never heal. But hidden in that pain is a gift, a painful, unwrapped gift. If you dare to open it, you'll find your true strength. Not the strength that comes from being needed, but the strength that comes from standing alone, from choosing yourself when no one else does. You see, if love was truly love, it would not vanish when it was no longer convenient. If someone can abandon you, child or not, that says more about them than it does about you. Let them go. Not because you are unworthy, but because clinging to someone who cannot see your worth dims the brilliance of your soul. This moment, this agonizing, lonely moment, can either destroy you or transform you. It is your choice. Look to history. The greatest souls were often the most misunderstood, the most rejected, the most abandoned. They did not crumble, they became legends. Not because life was gentle, but because they refused to be broken. Ask yourself: how much energy have you spent trying to make sense of another's choices? How many sleepless nights wondering when the love turned to indifference? How many times have you asked yourself, what did I do to deserve this? But the truth is, some questions have no answers. And chasing them robs you of your present peace. What you do have, what you've always had, is the power to choose how you respond. The Stoics taught us something profound: freedom is found not in changing external circumstances, but in mastering our inner world. Let that sink in. Pain becomes a doorway to freedom only when we stop resisting it. When we stop trying to control what we cannot, and instead invest in the one thing we always can, ourselves. You are still here. You are still breathing. You still carry the capacity for joy, for love, for meaning. But only if you stop anchoring your worth to someone else's ability, or inability, to recognize it. Yes, the absence of your child may feel like a permanent hole in your heart. But what if, instead, it is a space for something new? A deeper peace. A fuller self. Because your identity was never meant to belong to another, not even your child. There comes a time when you must look in the mirror and ask, who am I now? For so long, you were the parent, the provider, the caregiver. Your life was measured in milestones, first steps, report cards, graduations. You gave because love asked it of you. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. But now, as life shifts and roles dissolve, you are invited to become something more, not just a parent, but a whole person. You may be facing a new kind of silence now. The kind that lingers when a child stops calling. But what if that silence is not a void, but a space filled with answers? Within that stillness is the chance to see yourself, not as someone who was left behind, but as someone who is finally free from needing to be seen through someone else's eyes. You do not need anyone to define you. Not anymore. And yes, I know what you're thinking, how do I move forward when the foundation of my life has crumbled? You begin by understanding this, your life was never supposed to hinge on another person's validation. Even your child's. If your entire sense of worth depends on someone else recognizing it, what happens when they don't? Does it disappear? Of course not. It simply means you've been looking for your reflection in the wrong mirror. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are not unloved. You are a soul. A force. A spirit of immense depth, wisdom, and grace. And if someone cannot see that, even your own child, it is not your job to convince them. Seeking validation from those who withhold it is the surest path to losing yourself. Let that go. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you stop chasing. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's awareness of it. And that's when the miracle happens. That's when you finally begin to look inward. You see, rejection has a way of cornering us. Making us feel forgotten, discarded, unseen. But that corner, though painful, reveals a hidden door. A door that leads to the version of you who doesn't just survive, but thrives. Beyond the ache, beyond the unanswered questions, beyond all the roles you once played, there is a version of you waiting to be discovered. One who is not burdened by needing approval. One who doesn't beg to be noticed. And here's the most beautiful part, when you truly let go, you don't just release pain. You release the illusion that your joy was ever dependent on another human being. You wake up. You see the world differently. You find beauty in a morning walk, in a shared smile with a stranger, in the quiet power of your own breath. Not because someone else gave it to you, but because it was always within you. And this, my dear friends, is the great paradox. The moment you stop needing others to see you is the moment you finally see yourself. This is not bitterness. This is wholeness. It is not about becoming untouchable by hiding your heart, it is about becoming unshakable because you have found your peace within. That is the true gift of rejection. In losing what you once thought you couldn't live without, you discover something even greater, the unbreakable truth that you alone are enough. But this is just the beginning. Now that you've let go, it's time to rebuild. Life has a way of stripping us to our essence. It tears down illusions, removes crutches, and leaves us bare. But that's when we are most ready, to rise, to grow, to become. When your child turns away, it feels like the ground beneath you disappears. But hear me, you are still standing. Rejection is not the end. It is the beginning of a different kind of strength. Not a strength built on being needed, but a strength built on knowing who you are. Not a strength that clings, but a strength that releases. Not a strength that fights to be seen, but one that shines even when no one is looking. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you reclaim yourself, not as a mother or father, not as a giver who was taken for granted, but as a soul who now walks in wholeness. You are not alone. You were never alone. Even in your darkest hour, God stood beside you. You have learned to let go, not because you gave up, but because you chose freedom. You have discovered that your peace, your joy, your very purpose were never meant to be held hostage by anyone else, not even the child you once held in your arms. Take a deep breath. Lift your head. And walk forward. Not as someone who lost, but as someone who has finally been set free. Because rejection, my dear friends, is not a curse. It is a call. A call to come home, not to a person, not to a past, but to yourself. And that is the greatest blessing of all.